I know she has significant medical problems and she's on oxygen and various treatments. I believe she has cancer. I'm not a medical professional.
Hold on, one moment, Mr. Lennerson. So, Mr. Beauregard, I do see another individual with you on camera. I'm assuming that's your father. And if so, I think he's probably a potential witness and he should be in another room.
Okay. He's leaving right now.
I just messaged that to my client. I just noticed he got back in there.
All right, thank you. All right. Sorry for that interruption, Mr. Lennerson. You may proceed.
Could you continue answering the original question, Mr. Harmon?
Yes, I stated she has a multitude of medical problems that, is my understanding, are quite severe, but I'm not a medical professional.
Have those problems interfered with your counseling?
Not with the counseling, no. She's mentally alert.
Okay. Has Alyssa expressed concerns about seeing her father in the flesh, in the same room?
Yes.
Can you give me an example of what her concerns are?
Judge,
Yeah,
I'm going to object as to hearsay.
Okay. So, Mr. Lennerson, there is a hearsay objection.
It's, without having a child testify, we have to understand what the concerns of the child are with the present situation as far as parenting time.
Still not an exception to the hearsay rule, Judge.
All right. I would agree that is not an exception to the hearsay rule. So I will sustain the objection.
Okay. I will note for the record, believe that the child has been interviewed prior to this hearing, correct?
I did conduct a preference interview, yes.
Mr. Harmon, on the basis of your conversations with Alyssa, are there concerns with her safety during parenting time?
Judge, again, I'm going to object. That's still going to be hearsay. His concerns are again brought by what the child told him. It doesn't surpass the hearsay exception.
Mr. Lennerson, any response?
The concerns of the court are whether there are concerns between the child and the father as far as current parenting time situation. How can it be discussed without having some knowledge of what those concerns are?
Judge, again, if Mr. Harmon is going to testify to what he's observed between the father and the child, that's fine. I think he's testifying to what the child told him, and that's what the concerns are. That's still hearsay.
Correct. I would agree. Unless there's some sort of foundation that would get beyond the hearsay issue as to how he has the knowledge. I do believe that it is hearsay, so I will sustain the objection.
Mr. Harmon, in the counseling sessions, have you attended any counseling sessions with the father and the daughter together?
No.
Okay. This time I have no other questions for Mr. Harmon.
Thank you. Mr. Gurner, do you have any questions for this witness?
A couple of questions, Judge. Thank you. Mr. Harmon, you practice in Oakland County, is that correct?
Yes.
What is the address or the name of your facility where you practice out of?
Therapy Services of Clarkston.
You broke up on mine in the last one. Therapy Services of what? I'm sorry.
Clarkston.
Clarkston, thank you.
Yeah, where Pine Knob is. Clarkston.
Thank you.
And that's 6770 Dixie Highway,
Okay.
Suite 103.
Thank you.
You're
Are
welcome.
do you have a phone number for your practice?
Yes, I do. I could get the phone number from my secretary. I have a cell number. I can give you the office number if you give me a moment.
Well, that's all right. Are you telling me you do not know what your office number is off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't.
And you've been practicing since 1998?
Well, I've been at this office
Okay, and then you've been at this office for how long?
roughly 3 years.
All right. In your 3 years of practice, primarily, what encompasses your caseload? Is it children, adults, grief, marriage? What is the caseload that you have?
Children, adults, grief. They typically call my cell number,
Okay. What is that cell phone number of yours, sir?
248
Okay.
791
Yep.
4211.
All right. Thank you. I asked that my client doesn't have any of your contact info that we requested, so I appreciate you giving us that. My next line of questioning is going to deal with when you first met with Alyssa. Her mother reached out to you, correct?
Correct.
And her mother told you some of the reasonings why she would want to bring Alyssa for therapy with you, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did you ever reach out to the father to discuss therapy with Alyssa?
No,
Why not?
I did not hear from him. I would certainly talk. I would talk with him.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this a different way. How would you propose to hear from him when nobody has given him your contact information?
I was not aware he did not have my contact information.
Okay. So that makes sense, right? That Phil doesn't get a hold of you because nobody tells him how to get a hold of you, right? That makes sense. That's why he didn't get a hold of you.
Correct.
Did you ever ask Miss Morrison about Alyssa's father's involvement? Because I assume she told you some things regarding the father that brought Alyssa to counseling, correct?
Correct.
It never dawned on you to say, well, gee, Tina, why don't you give me the father's information?
No, I was expecting to hear from the father, and I had faith in what Alyssa and Tina were telling me.
Right, but you don't know what the other side of the story is from Phil's perspective, correct?
Correct.
And wouldn't it be nice to know what Phil's perspective is in all of these things that's occurring, whatever it is that's occurring?
Correct.
And you just took Tina at her word as to what she indicated to you, correct?
Yes.
All right. My question again is, now that you know that Phil was not aware of your contact information to what you provided on the record, did it never dawn on you, never come upon you that perhaps I should reach out to this person who these people are coming to my office to seek therapy about?
Mhm.
Simple yes or no.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. What steps did you take then to follow through with that thought process of how do I get a hold of Phil?
I did not.
So you did nothing.
Correct.
Okay. You're supposed to be a neutral investigator, or I'm sorry, a neutral person in dealing with Alyssa's situation, correct? Whatever that situation is.
Correct.
And it would benefit you to have two sides of the story to help Alyssa with whatever it is that she's going through, correct?
Correct.
But you don't have both sides of the story.
Correct.
Okay. So if you don't have both sides of the story to help Alyssa, you're really not able to provide a whole lot of help to her without understanding the other side, correct?
I could help her based on her perspective and what she's experiencing.
Did you ever determine based on what her perspective and what she's experiencing is probably coming from what her mother has told her? Did you ever make that decision or determine that?
Alyssa's a bright young lady, and I didn't sense the mother was manipulating her.
Okay, did you ask any of those questions to
Which
determine
one?
if there was any manipulation or coaching going on?
Questions regarding if there was manipulation going on?
Yeah, did you?
Well, yeah, I mean, Alyssa's story's been consistent. It's not changed. I feel she's being honest with me.
Okay. Again, and that's based on what Alyssa is reporting to you, correct?
Mhm. Correct.
And based on what her mother brought you into counseling for, correct?
Correct, what the mother brought her in for.
Yeah. Doesn't it seem odd to you that the mother brings Alyssa into counseling to you
Mhm.
and does not share with her co-parent your information? I then subpoena her attorney to get the information, and I'm told, well, we can't give you the information. You've done this since 1998. Doesn't that seem odd to you?
Odd in the sense that the information was subpoenaed.
Odd in the sense that the information that was available was withheld.
It's withheld.
Withheld
I-
from Phil.
Withheld from Phil. Do you mean that the information was subpoenaed through Mr. Lennerson?
Yes.
I wasn't aware that that was subpoenaed.
Okay. And don't you think that information that was subpoenaed and asked to provide Mr. Phil with your information, and even back in June when Ms. Morrison reached out to you, she withheld giving Phil any information. Does that, raise any concerns in your mind that one parent withheld the information of the child's counselor from the other parent?
At the time, I didn't feel information was being withheld.
Well, now that you know that information is being withheld, we've established that, doesn't that raise concerns now?
Yes,
Does it lead you to believe that there might be some manipulation, something that the mother is hiding and doesn't want you to know, or reach out to Mr. Beauregard?
I didn't sense it was manipulation. Perhaps it could be,
Okay,
perhaps.
okay.
I'm willing to talk to the father.
Well, I understand you're willing to talk to the father, but and that's not my line of questioning, sir. My line of questioning is simply that a parent reaches out to you and comes to you with, hey, my child is having some issues,
Right.
correct? And then
Yes.
that scenario in your line of work happens often, correct? You've indicated since
Yes.
1998, you've been a therapist, you see children. Okay.
Yeah. I typically only hear from one parent.
Okay, but the other parent then in this situation doesn't reach out to you at all?
Sometimes they call the office, or in more modern times, they have my cell number available.
Okay.
It's
And-
with
and-
my contact information.
Right, and in some cross-examination of yourself, we established that information was not shared both by subpoena and voluntarily between the parents.
Mhm.
And my question again was, that could lead one to believe, somebody who's done this for 20 years like yourself, that there might be something more going on. And I think you testified perhaps, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Did Ms. Morrison provide you with any historical documentation from Child Protective Services?
No, just verbal reports.
All right. And did Ms. Morrison, in those verbal reports, what she told you, indicate to you that she reported Mr. Beauregard to Child Protective Services? Did she mention that to you?
Yes, there had been incidents.
Right, and did she then further inform you the outcome of what happened with that incident?
I recall that there were supposed to be in-person visits, I believe, at the DHS office, and they were not cooperating.
Okay, and what if I told you that those things are untrue In fact, CPS, Child Protective Services, closed the case and there was no further outcome of that matter after they investigated those allegations. Nothing happened.
Yeah, closed.
Okay, but it's different from the in-person visits at DHHS office, correct?
Well, my second remark was that it's my recollection it was closed.
Okay, but you've got two different reporting sources. One, Ms. Morrison telling you he had to do in-person visits at a DHHS office. I'm telling you that finding was never made.
Okay,
And you took that at face value from Ms. Morrison, correct?
correct.
But did you do anything to, verify if those things were accurate and accurately reported to you?
No,
And now that you know that was not accurately stated to you, do you have any thoughts on that?
in what regard?
That the mother was telling you a story that didn't match what the legal outcome of a situation was?
I would believe that the case was closed.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you, there was no case ever opened that needed to be closed.
Okay,
Did the mother ever tell you that?
I recall that the case was closed. And that would assume that allegations were not founded.
Okay. When you are visiting with Alyssa by telehealth services, the similar Zoom hearing that we're having, who's present with you in those sessions?
The daughter, Alyssa.
Anybody else present with her?
The mother checks in with me at the beginning or the end regarding updates and scheduling matters, which
All
is
right.
typical.
Do you know if the mother was present in the room off to a screen?
As far as I know, she's not in the area.
Okay, and if I were to tell you that she's in the area, would that cause some sort of a concern with your therapy sessions?
I object. There's no way of knowing whether that's a true statement or not.
It's cross-examination, Judge. I think I have leeway of asking if he has any concerns that those are occurring.
I will overrule the objection.
Go ahead, Mr. Harmon.
No, I don't have problems with Tina and Alyssa.
Okay. Did you receive any documentation from hospice care at U of M?
No,
Did you receive any documentation from Hiawatha Behavior Control by a therapist by the name of Sarah to review her prior notes?
no,
Were those two facilities ever mentioned to you regarding the child's counseling?
I recall University of Michigan. I don't recall Hiawatha.
Are you familiar with this Hiawatha Behavior Control facility?
No,
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. Lennon, do you have any other questions?
Yes, I do. Dr. Harmon, as it relates to the allegations, Ms. Morrison made certain allegations that concerned her regarding the contact between father and daughter to you directly, correct?
Mr. Leonardson, are you talking to me?
Yes. As it relates to the original contact, Ms. Morrison indicated to you her concerns between father and daughter. Isn't that accurate?
Yes, that is true. Yes.
Now, when you interviewed the child, were those allegations consistent with what the mother had relayed to you?
Judge, again, I'm going to object. I don't think this witness can vouch for credibility. clearly he's not qualified to do that. So Melton hasn't qualified him, and I would also object it's now beyond the scope of my cross.
I disagree with that. The question was her testimony consistent with what her mother had indicated the problem? All we're looking at is whether the remarks by Miss Morrison and the daughter were consistent.
Well, I guess I'm confused by whether what they both told him were consistent.
Yes.
All right,
Was
well,
this-
that would though require him to use the statement from the child. If you're asking something about what Miss Morrison told him, that's different, but I will sustain.
Mr. Harmon,
Yes,
on the basis of the interview between the child and you, were the remarks consistent as related to the mother?
I'm gonna renew my objection, Judge. It's the same line of question, it just asked a different way. It still elicits a statement from the child as to consistency in vouching.
Mr. Larson, any response?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the problem with the court on this. The child was interviewed by Mr. Harmon. They were based on statements made by the mother. Opposing counsel is saying that the mother's statements were unfounded. All I'm wanting to know is if the conversations were similar in contact between the mother and Mr. Harmon, as well as the child and Mr. Harmon. And I believe that would be of value to the court.
Whether something is of value or not is not what the hearsay exceptions say. There may be hearsay exceptions that apply or not, but I'm asking if you feel there's a specific hearsay exception that applies. Or if it's not even hearsay. So what's the argument as to hearsay?
It's hearsay as the mother presents it, but when the child presents it to the counselor, it ceases being hearsay. The child has been interviewed by a counselor for problems that originated during parenting time. It is not hearsay. It is how the child receives that information from the father, either verbally or in some other matter. Is what we're here before court on. Is there some problem between the child and the father as far as contact as it relates to these matters? I think it has been that there is some difficulty and there is some consistency. I just want the court to verify that there is consistency in the statements of the child as well as the statements by the mother.
Right.
The mother's.
So are you not offering it for the truth of the matter asserted by the child, but just to show consistency between what the child and the mother are saying?
At this point in time, I'm just approaching it very casually and asking for consistency between the mother or the comments made by the mother.
Okay.
The child
If it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, I will look at it differently and I would overrule the objection. So if you're not asking for the truth of the matter asserted, you're simply asking for did they report the same issues? That particular question, and I'm not going to accept the answer as being what the child said is true. But if it's to show consistency as opposed to the truth of the matter asserted, I will allow it.
I'm sorry, but I didn't follow the argument. I'm confused.
Well, I'm allowing the question, but I'm not accepting it for the truth. I just asked if you were offering it for a true statement or simply to show that they both reported the same things.
At this time, that's the limiting element. I just want a statement on the record that they were similar on matters or not.
Right? And that's what I just said I would allow.
But you ruled against it. Whose objection did you object to?
I overruled the objection and said I'm not allowing it for the truth of the matter asserted.
Right,
Correct.
but you would allow for consistency of the statement.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, at this point in time, I would take that as a element.
All right. So do you have a question then? You want to repeat the question then for Mr. Harmon?
Yes, Mr. Harmon.
Yes,
Very simply, was there consistency between the child's statements to you as her counselor and the statements made by the mother that induced the counseling?
yes,
Were they not only consistent, but did the child make them consistently and regularly?
Judge, again, now that's going to, again, to offer for the truth of the matter asserted, and that'll
Yes.
be hearsay. And
All right,
Mr.
so-
Nelson,
I think Mr. Anderson, you made the point that I allowed it for that purpose. And then Mr. Harmon did testify that they were consistent claims. So I think you hit that point. So if I'm going to sustain the objection to the next question. So do you have any additional questions for Mr. Harmon?
No, I do not.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gruber-Murthy, do you have anything additional for Mr. Harmon?
I do not.
All right, thank you. So Ms. Morrison had sent me a message asking if she could have a breakout room with Mr. Leonardson before we go on to the next witness. So I will do that. We'll assign a breakout room to Ms. Morrison and Mr. Leonardson. Mr. Gruber-Murthy, do you want a breakout room with your client at this time?
Sure.
Mr. Linton, is it all right if I call you Earl?
Yes, sir.
You are a family friend of Tina Morrison and the child, Alyssa. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What has your contact been with the family?
Basically a volunteer caregiver. I just sit here in case Alyssa needs anything.
Do you meet with Alyssa on a regular basis?
Pardon?
Do you meet with Alyssa on a regular basis?
Yes, 4 times a week.
Is it your, would it be your testimony that you are with Alyssa both before and after any contact between her and her father?
Yes.
Usually or every time?
Most of the time, I should say. The last few times, I didn't get here until after he left.
Can you explain what is Alyssa's attitude on completion of contact between her and her father?
She's very, how should I put, she's definitely not herself. She's kind of halfway between standoff and crying. Definitely not herself. She's usually a happy, smiling child. But for a couple hours after he's left, she's definitely not the same child.
Can you indicate about how many times you've observed that?
Every time after he's been with her.
Well, every time, how many? 10 times, 20 times, 5 times? What?
I would
Just approximately.
I'm gonna put the number out there saying like 10 times.
Did you bring any of these? Did you bring in concerns to the mother? Have you mentioned these concerns to the mother?
I don't have to because she can see it herself, so.
You and her are together on these contacts? You're with the mother?
On most occasions, yes, I come in and Tina will be headed for work, and shortly after he had left, and I could definitely see a difference in how Alyssa was acting. She was very not herself. She wasn't happy, and she just wanted to be alone.
So as an observer, are you saying that Alyssa is disturbed by contact with her father?
Judge, I'm going to object as to leading. I don't think that's what he said. That's what Mr. Leonardson's testifying to.
Can you rephrase the question, Mr. Leonardson?
Yes, Mr. Lyndon. Would you, in your own words, indicate what your concerns are about the contact between the father and the daughter at this time?
I would hate to see the fact that he doesn't get to see her or anything like that, but I do believe there ought to be something there to, somebody there that can keep the situation under control.
I'm going to object again, Judge, as to foundation. I think Mr. Lyndon testified he's not there during parenting time. He's there after. So
Well, I agree. He was sort of rendering an opinion as opposed to an observation there. So if he can get Mr. Leonardson, if you can get him on track to, discuss observations, that's fine. But he was really just rendering an opinion at that point. So I will sustain the objection.
Mr. Lyndon, let me rephrase that. Your observations of Alyssa after the contact with her father give you concern. Is that correct?
Yeah.
again, I'm going to renew that. I'm going to renew that objection. And I'm also going to renew my objection as to leading. He's asking a answer and saying, is that correct?
Well, I think that question was sort of already asked and answered. So I think he's already testified that he had concerns based on the observations that he made, that he has seen from the child after visits. So I will overrule that objection.
As it pertains to your observations, can you give the court some specific examples of Alyssa's response or attitude after contact with her father?
Like I said, she's normally a very happy young lady. She's I don't know how to put it. She's just a very nice child. But after she's been with her dad for a while, she just kind of standoff and kind of wants to be alone. And a couple of times that I've observed that she was next to crying after that.
Do these examples of contact concern you?
Again, Judge, I think we're back at the same objection. I will renew that.
Okay, so for that question, I would sustain the objection.
Okay. I have no further questions of this witness.
Thank you. Mr. Gurner, do you have any questions for this witness?
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Lyndon, you testified that you know Phil, correct?
I don't know him personally, no.
Have you seen Phil?
Yes, I've seen him on a couple of different occasions. Yeah.
All right. And you and Phil have conversations, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I asked you if you know Phil. You said you don't know him personally. That's not true. You know who Phil is, correct?
I know who he is, yes, but I don't personally.
Okay. I didn't ask you if you personally knew. I simply asked you if you knew who Phil was. You know Phil, and I've talked to Phil at least on 3 or 4 different occasions, correct?
Yes,
And on those 3 or 4 different occasions you've talked to Phil, did you ever tell Phil, hey, I have some concerns about what Alyssa and I observe after you leave? Did you ever tell him that?
no, sir, because he was usually on the way out the door.
Well, I know, but why don't you tell him? You talk to him, you shake his hands when he's leaving the door, right? Those observations, those conducts occur, right?
I'm not sure what you're asking, sir.
Well, I'm asking you on Phil's way out, you tell him goodbye, you shake his hands, correct?
No, I basically told him goodbye. I shook his hand once.
All right. And it never came about you as a concern to tell Phil, hey, let me talk to you for a minute. After you leave, this is what I observe. I think it's important for you to know what I observe. You never told him those things, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. Why not?
For one thing, I didn't feel it was any of my business to get involved in it.
But it's your business today to get involved?
Like I said, I didn't feel it was my place to say anything.
I understand that it was not your place to tell Phil anything, but it's your place to be here today, correct? You want to be involved today?
I was asked to be here, yes.
Yeah. I have nothing further, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. Lennox, any redirect for this witness?
No,
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. You are all set. If you could please put her back on the,
Okay.
video. Thank you. All right, Mr. Lennox, any additional witnesses?
I would like to call Tina Morrison to stand for limited testimony, as I did not participate in the original hearing. I have some limited questions I would like to bring forth.
Judge, I would again object to those. If he's calling us a rebuttal, no problem. Mr. Lennoxon was present at the last hearing and conducted extensive direct examination. I want to correct that part of the record. Mr. Lennoxon was present.
Okay. All right. So I would agree that she did testify. So if there is potential rebuttal after the case presented by Mr. Gurner, that is certainly a potential. But at this point, she could not be recalled on the direct presentation of Mr. Lennoxon's case.
I have no further witnesses.
Pardon? No further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, I have no witnesses to call.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Gurner, do you wish to call any witnesses?
I do, Judge, but I think in light of the 2 new witnesses that were called, I would ask for an adjournment, ask for some additional time so I can properly ask those witnesses, at least Mr. Harmon. My issue is that Mr. Lennoxon did not qualify Mr. Harmon as an expert. I don't know what kind of counseling he's providing to Alyssa. There's no testimony of what the allegations are other than, do you have concerns about the allegations? I have no idea. I think I need to explore those things so I can adequately prepare and then adequately present witnesses to
Well, let's hear from your client if you wish to call him as a witness, and then we can hear some, I mean, if it's going to be necessary to make a decision in this matter to allow that, I will certainly do that, but I would like to hear if you want to present any testimony from your client. This is obviously essentially their parenting time motion because she applied for an ex parte order. It was denied. She is seeking changes to the existing order. Part of that is the need to show proper cause and a change of circumstances, as well as then that the requested changes are in the best interest of the child. So rather than adjourn to give you time to do cross-examination on those witnesses, I'd rather see if we proceed forward today, and then at the what is the necessity to bring those witnesses back.
I understand. And then I'm fine with that, Judge. So Judge, this is what I would like to do. I would like to then orally motion the court to then summarily dismiss this matter based on the lack of proper cause or circumstances. Nothing has changed. There's been no evidence presented by Mr. Leonardson regarding any change or any proper cause. Again, even by the counselor, there's nothing here testified to that shows. The order is what it is. Mr. Beauregard has supervised parenting time. It's limited once a week or for a few hours. That's where we're at. Nothing changes. And I would just ask the court to make that ruling. If the court doesn't agree with me, then I will call my client and his father. But I don't think that we need to even go that far based on the evidence that's been developed over the last 2 hearings we've had. There's nothing here.
Thank you. Mr. Leonardson, did you want to make any argument as to whether or not there's been a showing of proper cause or a change of circumstances?
Not really. The court is aware of the situation. There exists some problems, and it involves the father and the child during the parenting time. There are ways that the court can decide how that can be corrected, but there at least should be observation of that parenting time for the court to make evaluation. And so we're asking that parenting time too is evaluated for the court. The child is counseling since the filing of the divorce, so she is obviously uncomfortable with the situation. It has not progressed since 2016. It's 5 years. The child is, I believe, 11. Half of her life has been spent in improper or unfocused parenting time with the father. It needs to be corrected. The court has the ability to correct it, and nothing has been done for 5 years. We're asking for consideration to modify parenting time for the benefit and safety of the child. That remains our request, and the court is given enough information that realize there's a problem that exists that needs to be modified or corrected. That's
Right. Thank you. So I'm not making a ruling that there is proper cause or change of circumstances right now, but I'm going to reserve that. I think there may or may not be. The concerns that I would have is that if we simply accept at this point, the testimony from plaintiff was that the supervisor would fall asleep, allow cursing, and some other issues. None of that has been refuted. So for purposes of, at this point, I would have to accept those as, since they have not been controverted, as potential truths. So given that, I think that would potentially rise to the level of proper cause or change of circumstances. Again, if I hear counter testimony, it may change as to whether or not there ultimately is that. So I'm not making the ruling that exists at this time, but I do believe it is enough to continue with additional testimony. We need and hear from the other side, hear from Mr. Gurner's witnesses.
Thank you, Judge. I would call Phillip Beauregard, Judge.
All right, Mr. Beauregard, if you could please unmute.
Unmuted.
All right, thank you. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Phillip Beauregard.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gurner, you may proceed.
Thank you. Phil, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, thank you. Phil, you are Alyssa's father, correct?
Correct.
All right, how old is Alyssa?
11.
All right, would you describe your parenting time for, and at one point parenting time was expanded? What did that look like between you and Alyssa?
Well, until Tina filed the motion, everything was pretty good. We'd hang out and watch TV, and laugh and play games, and if she told me she was hungry, I'd cook her a meal, and yeah, everything was pretty good. And then week after week after the motion was filed, week after week after week, the experience got more and more and more hard to deal with. Things would change, new household rules would be put into place, things like that. I am no longer allowed to use Tina's internet or her TV. And she's put up cameras all over the house. And that makes me feel very uncomfortable, because under no circumstance will I ever do anything to hurt my daughter. She is the love of my life.
Hold on, let me ask you some questions. You're going to do a narrative. Hold on a second. So
Okay.
what changed since the motion was filed? You said certain rules and conditions in the house changed.
Tina had asked for longer parenting time so she could go to work. And I agreed. No big deal. I get to spend more time with my daughter. And then the motion was filed and things went on for a bit. And then when we had to come back the second time, she told me that her house she texted me and said that her house is only available for for my visitation based on what the divorce agreement says. And that is from 11 to 3. So she had flat out told me that the only time I can come to her house for a visit is from 11 to 3 on Mondays. And then she changed. She used to work on Mondays, and now she no longer works. She's sitting in the room with us. And it just, got really, really uncomfortable after that.
Okay. How were things with Alyssa? Without telling us what Alyssa said, just the demeanor when you came for visits, when you would leave, what was Alyssa's demeanor?
She always gave me a hug and a smile and said, "I love you." And out the door I went. She seemed perfectly okay.
All right. Did Tina ever tell you after you would leave regarding any concerns about Alyssa's behaviors?
Only if it was something severe enough that she needed to, and it usually didn't apply to me. Okay,
so she would just talk to you about her medical conditions, but nothing about her demeanor after you would leave. All right. How was Alyssa's demeanor when you would go to the house on Mondays, when you'd first get there?
Well, usually when I first get there, she's just crawling out of bed, so she's really sleepy. And it takes her about an hour or so to, get herself awake. But then we start hanging out and playing cards and laughing and having a good old time. But then it all kind of changed where she kind of wrapped up into her shell. She kind of pulled into her shell. She doesn't want to talk as the weeks progressed. She kind of crawled into her shell and she doesn't want to talk. She doesn't want to hug me anymore. She won't tell me she loves me unless she's cued to. And she even stopped giving me proper hugs. But that's just as the weeks progress. And then
now prior to the motion being filed, did you have regular text or other methods of communication?
She hasn't responded to a text from me since June. Well, that's not true. A couple of weeks ago, I texted her and she said that.
Well, hold on.
Okay, I'm gonna rephrase it. She did respond and asked me to let her be, but I don't know if that was her or Tina, which is hearsay. But.
Well, Phil, hold on. Let me ask you questions.
Okay.
Prior to the motion,
she hasn't responded to a text since June.
Phil, hold on. Let me ask you the question. You don't know what the question is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Let me finish and then answer them, okay?
Okay.
All right. Prior to June, did you have any other methods of communication during the week other than the visits that you were having?
I was teaching her school. I was teaching her school 5 times, actually only be 4 days a week in the evenings, because that's when my schedule would allow. And then And we'd do school, and then afterwards we'd play Magic online between my computer and her computer. And we had a lot of fun doing that. And then all of a sudden Tina decided to take her education responsibilities back from me. And even though I still pay for it.
How would you do school-related work with Alyssa?
We would use Messenger, Facebook Messenger, to communicate with one another. And then we have what's called Time for Learning. It's a online curriculum that we would use. I bring it up on my computer, the teacher end on my computer, student end on her computer, and we'd use Messenger to communicate back and forth.
Okay. Now, your judgment of divorce indicates that your father is your supervisor, correct?
Correct.
And who picked that person as the supervisor?
He's kind of the only person in my life that fits the specific criteria that was put into the divorce agreement, which I had no say so.
All right, and what's your understanding of the specific criteria that somebody?
It's a male, at least 21 years old, without a felony on their record, and there may be one other criteria I'm missing, but it's very specific.
All right, and who do you live with?
I live with my father.
All right, do you have any other family members here that can provide supervision?
Nope.
All right, do you have any other family members, period?
People that talk to me, just my sister and brother-in-law, and they live in Maryland.
Okay. Now, during your parenting time, Ms. Morrison indicates that you curse.
No.
So do you curse and yell during your parenting time?
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
Yeah, during your parenting time with Alyssa, are you cursing and yelling at Alyssa?
If I raise my voice, it's because Tina has said or done something that aggravated me, and it was worse before I quit smoking. Now I've quit smoking, and now everything's mellow.
Okay. Now, during your parenting time, prior to the motion being filed, who was present in the home?
During my visits,
Yes.
most of the time it's just me, Alyssa, and my dad. And sometimes Tina would be there, or she would be upstairs in their old house, or she'd be cleaning, or sometimes she'd go out grocery shopping. Every week was a little different.
Okay. During your time with Alyssa, was there ever any opportunity or anything arise that Alyssa was put in harm's way? She was unsafe?
Not that I can recall. I'd have to say no.
During any of your parenting time with Alyssa, has Tina had to call the police because you were yelling and screaming? Or
no, the police have never been called. I've never had a run-in with Sault Ste. Marie police.
All right. Has Tina ever had to call Child Protective Services on you for yelling and cursing at Alyssa?
She has called, and I've talked to them, and as we know, the cases were closed because there's no evidence, and I don't do that.
Yeah. Were you cooperative with CPS when they reached out to you?
Oh, sure. And I told them the same thing I'm telling now. Under no circumstances do I ever abuse my daughter. Never, never, never.
All right. Now there's some allegations that your father falls asleep. Would you explain, what the drive time is to Sault Ste. Marie, how long you're there, and what happens while you're there with your father?
We leave about 8:30-ish in the morning, and it's about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours from where we live to Sault Ste. Marie. And we split the drive time. He drives up, I drive back. And it's about a 4-hour journey to and from. And then we spend 4 hours with Alyssa. And the man's 78 years old. And, he has to rest his eyes every once in a while. I say his name, his eyes open, and
Okay. When you say he's sleeping, is he asleep? Is he just sitting in the
I didn't say he was sleeping. I said he was resting his eyes.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Where was he in proximity of where you and Alyssa exercise your parenting time?
Alyssa and I would sit on one couch and he'd be on the adjacent couch,
Okay,
like 4 or 5 feet from each other, maybe.
all right. Is your father in another room on a bed somewhere?
Yes. He's in the back of the house right now.
I don't mean right now. I mean during parenting time.
Oh, he's right in the room with us.
All right. He's not in a separate room in a bedroom?
No. Nope. The only time he leaves the room is to go to the bathroom.
All right. Now, you heard from Mr. Harmon, Joe Harmon, who is the therapist. Did you
Yeah.
ever know Mr. Harmon?
I've never met Mr. Harmon. Never received a phone call from him. Didn't even know who he was until today.
Did anybody ever, provide to you Mr. Harmon's contact information?
Nope. Any of these therapists that she's supposedly seen, I didn't know anything about it and have no information whatsoever on how to contact those folks.
Now, you're not opposed to contacting Mr. Harmon, correct?
No, sure. If I can give it his information, I'll speak to him about the matter, no problem.
All right. Has Tina ever given you Mr. Harmon's information and said, hey, here's who our child is? Hold on, let me finish the question.
Okay.
Tina ever indicate to you and say, hey, here's who our daughter is seeing, here's the information. Ever given you that information since June?
Nope.
You're aware that we've asked for that information multiple times, correct?
Excuse me, can you say that again?
I said, you're aware that we've asked for that information multiple times, correct?
Yeah, sure.
And you ever get any sort of response regarding the contact information from Mr. Harmon?
I've never met Mr. Harmon. I don't have his information, never received it. Never even knew he existed until today.
Today's the first time you saw Mr. Harmon.
Yep.
Mr. Lyndon, you know Mr. Lyndon?
Mr. Lyndon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Earl
That is Earl, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been in each other's presence for, about 10 minutes total. First time I met him, I thanked him for taking care of Alyssa and I shook his hand and I left. And then there was another time where we had words out in the driveway and I'm not going to repeat it because it's not the kind of thing that you want to say in public, but he was late. I told him that, it's important that he needs to relieve me on time because my parenting time is over. And he told me he didn't care, and I'm paraphrasing. And I told him, and we were kind of mad at each other, and mind you, we're in the driveway. And then I told him, I really don't want you seeing my daughter anymore. And then once again, he said, I don't care, and I am paraphrasing.
All right. Did Mr. Lyndon ever tell you, Earl ever stop you and tell you, hey, I have some concerns, this is what I observed, mention anything to you?
Never.
Did Tina ever mention any of those concerns to you as well, that, she's changing the child?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. One second, Your Honor. Phil, there was some testimony that you neglect to feed Alyssa during your parenting time. Can you tell me anything about that?
What was that?
That you neglect to feed Alyssa during your parenting?
No, never. Alyssa knows that, she's on medical feeding pump. So she's always got something going into her stomach all the time. And I told her, that you're hungry, sweetheart, let me know and I will be happy to cook you something. And she usually does.
And when she does, do you prepare her meals?
I do. I make her an egg salad sandwich or whatever it is she wants. What do you want? And I make it for her.
Do you ever tell Tina that you don't have to monitor Alyssa's oxygen and you don't know how to do that?
Never. I know how to manage her oxygen. That was something that applied, before we got divorced. And I know how to do that, and I do it. I check her oxygen. You know, I may not do it as often as Tina does it, but I do check it. I'm on top of that and making sure her feeds are running good and all the medical stuff's all, you know, best I can in 4 hours.
Right. Now, Phil, does Tina involve Alyssa in conversations she has with you?
If she normally has the phone on speaker, so if Alyssa's in the room, I'd say yes. If she's not in the room, I'd say no.
Okay. Does Tina ever bring Alyssa into adult conversations, court-related matters that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. It's all speculation.
Do you have any child protective services involvement in your life now?
No.
Okay. And you're currently employed, correct?
Yes, I actually just got a brand new job. The job I had to quit when the day Alyssa was born. I got it back and I'm making more money than I was, and I'm on top of the world. I'm so happy. It's yeah, I'm working and I've got this great job and I'm trying to better myself all the time.
All right. You're still willing to continue those same visits that you have with Alyssa at Tina's residence, correct?
If I have to.
Okay. Are you able to do them elsewhere, supervised?
The only place I really have is to bring her home to my house, and Dad would still be the supervisor, and that's my only option.
Okay. Does Tina supervise your visits when you visit with Alyssa?
She hadn't until these court proceedings started. She used to, like I said, she used to go grocery shopping or go to work or whatever, and then once these proceedings started, she decided she's gonna be in the house during my visitation. So, like, that's her prerogative, I guess. But you know, we don't like each other very much, and I don't think it's best for Alyssa that, you know, we be in the same room with one another. We just don't like each other, and that's kind of why we got divorced.
Okay.
We just don't get along.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. Lennerson, any cross-examination?
Just a few. Sir, have you had discussions with your daughter concerning her uneasiness with your visitation?
Can you say that again, sir? You're cutting out.
Have you had any discussion with your daughter as it pertains to the difficulties that she perceives you having during parenting time?
I guess I don't understand your question, sir.
Has she expressed any concern about your parenting time?
Alyssa?
Yes.
No. Just after these proceedings started, she kind of just rolled up into a ball, and as the weeks progressed, and she doesn't want to talk to me, and I honestly don't know what that's all about, but no, she's never really talked to me about that. No.
When do you think this started?
What started, sir?
As far as her not talking to you?
Not talking to me, that just in, like, since the last court hearing, it really got bad.
Specifically, she stated that you stare at her breasts. Had she mentioned that to you?
I do not stare at her chest, and this is the only time I'm going to say it. I am not that kind of person. I love my daughter. She is the love of my life, and I would never in a million years do anything like that.
Yet your daughter has said that consistently.
I'm going to object as to hearsay, Judge.
I would agree. You're assuming a fact, not an evidence. You did ask if he has done that, and he has provided his response.
as it relates to your contact with your daughter, how many times recently have you raised your voice at her or cursed at her?
Define recently.
Last 6 months.
6 months? Never. I mean, I may have had an opinion about her not calling me on my birthday, but one time, but I never raised my voice. Yeah, and I haven't really, other than the few hours I get with her, I really haven't had too much, talking to her. She usually doesn't answer my phone calls and my texts. So what am I going to do?
In your limited contact with Mr. London, Earl, have you raised your voice or yelled at him?
I got agitated with Earl out in the driveway, away from Alyssa. We had one altercation real quick, all a minute maybe, and that, yeah, haven't really seen much of him since.
As far as your ex-wife, have you raised your voice or cursed at her in the past 6 months? In front of your child?
No, not that I can think of.
In describing yourself, would you say that you're mild-mannered or do you have a temper?
When I was younger, I had a temper, but I've been to therapy for that, two different occasions. And now that I've quit smoking and I've got the tools the therapist gave me, I don't have a problem with that anymore.
When was it that you did not have a problem? How long ago?
I quit smoking. I don't remember when I quit smoking, but it's something that I've progressively since we got divorced that I've been working on, and I'm not perfect, and as far as I'm aware, getting angry isn't illegal.
Do you recommend for your daughter?
You're cutting out, sir. Can I have you repeat that, please?
At this time, do you agree that your daughter needs counseling?
Yes, she does need counseling, but she needs both her parents involved in said counseling. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
What's her problems?
Her problems, other than her physical problems, and I'm kind of kept in the dark. I honestly don't know too much about her mental state, other than obviously there's something going on if therapists are being involved, and I'm just not being included.
When was the last time you had parenting time?
It would have been, let's see, when was the last time we had, I gotta look on the calendar, hold on. Last parenting time was the 2nd of August. So the week after that, Tina took Alyssa on vacation. And then the week after that, she had a doctor's appointment in Traverse City, so they had to travel. And then I saw her the week after that. And then the week after that, I show up for my parenting time, and Alyssa's in her bedroom. She doesn't want to see me. Tina's communicating with Alyssa over the telephone. I tried calling her to communicate with her. She wouldn't answer. She wouldn't talk to me. I don't know what it was all about. And I'm just like, and honestly, I ended up leaving because Tina and I don't like each other. I'm not going to spend 4 hours in Tina's living room with her when it's my parenting time and I haven't even seen my kid yet. So, and then after that, I haven't seen her since because my dad and I caught COVID, and because of her medical fragility, we have to stay away. We have to stay away another couple of weeks just to make sure we're over it before I come back. So I've only seen her once since the last hearing.
I have no additional questions.
Thank you. Mr. Gurner, anything additional for Mr. Beauregard?
Just I want to clarify a couple of things. Mr. Beauregard, Mr. Leonardson asked you in the last 6 months if you've yelled at Alyssa. And I want to just clarify that. You may have not liked certain things, but do you call and yell at Alyssa or take it out on Alyssa?
I never take out my anger on Alyssa. She's my sweetheart.
Okay. Have you ever yelled or cursed at Alyssa?
Never.
All right.
Well, I got angry with her one time. We're doing school, and she was supposed to be taking a test, and she wasn't taking the test. She was playing with Pokemon toys. So I got a little angry with her, but I didn't cuss at her. And I mean, any parent in that situation would get angry with their child if they're supposed to be taking a test and they're not taking a test. They're playing with toys. How long
ago was that?
I honestly don't recall.
Is it in the last 6 months?
Sure, I could agree with that in the last 6 months.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions, Judge.
All right, thank you. Mr. Leonardson, anything based on the questions just asked?
No,
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Murphy, your next witness.
I would call him Mr. Ken Beauregard, Judge.
Hold on just 1 second. I'm gonna go get him out of the back of the house.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Beauregard, you are the supervisor for parenting time between Phil and Alyssa, correct?
Yes.
All right. Just based on your observations, what can you tell us, your observations between Phil and Alyssa during their parenting time?
They're enjoying each other's company. You know, it all depends on what day it is, because we've been doing this about 6 years, and they find different things to play with. When they're playing regular games, I was joining them and everything, and then when they got into playing Nintendo games and like that, since I'm not a gamer or anything, I let them do it themselves, what they wanted, and I read, listening to them all the time they were playing. And same thing when they went into the magic system, and they do that by themselves because I don't care to do that.
All right. Does Phil yell and curse at Alyssa, scream at her during parenting time?
Never.
Okay. And how would you describe Alyssa's demeanor towards Phil when she sees him or is interacting with him?
She always likes him. I mean, he she comes in, gives him a hug, and then when they're through with their time, they hug each other and say they love each other, and I've never seen her just despondent or anything else.
Do you see Alyssa being afraid or fearful of Phil?
No, I don't.
All right. When you're supervising these visits, are you sleeping or where are you, in proximity?
Well, since I read this anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours, I have to rest my eyes every once in a while so I can see when I leave the store or leave the house, because reading up close, but when you do it for a couple hours, it kind of really bothers me. But I don't have much else to do other than watch. And most of the time I'm listening to what they do and what they say and everything, but
all right.
that's about it.
Are you sleeping or are you just there, just listening to what they're doing and giving Phil and Alyssa their space?
I'm sure sometime in that 6 years I have fallen asleep, but it happens very seldom. I do feel like, when I read a while, my eyes go tired and I have to, close them and look at something else and all that. But
do you hear what Phil and Alyssa are talking about?
Usually they're talking about the game, or they're talking about food, or whether her peas are running and they're auctioning,
Any concerns regarding Phil and Alyssa's conversations when they're having those while you're present?
Nope, to me, it's all normal father-daughter conversations, and she really is smart enough to play the magic game and a few other things, and she's, they have as far as I can tell, they're having a good time.
Does, has Tina ever told you, after parenting time is concluded, that Alyssa has some concerns, or Tina may have concerns about Phil?
No, she never has told me that.
Has she ever brought up to you any issues that Alyssa may be having while Phil's there?
No, she hasn't.
Okay. All right, I have nothing further, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. Lennerson, any questions for Mr. Beauregard?
Yes, Mr. Beauregard, have you noticed any change in your granddaughter's relationship with your father, say in the past year?
No, I haven't, until this last time that she went up there and wouldn't even talk to him.
Isn't that quite severe? Would you say it was a difficulty?
Well, that is quite severe, but I don't know why, because the time before that we came up there, she didn't have any trouble at all. She never has had a trouble talking to him or, saying hi and hugging him and all that.
And yet she was willing to break off any contact with your father in your last contact?
Yes, she did. She would not even respond to him when he tried to talk to her through the door or nothing like that. And wouldn't answer her phone, but she would answer a phone call from her mother, and that was it.
And you've not observed that to previously?
Nope, I have never had any indication that something like that was about to happen.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Gurner, any other questions?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, sir, you may be excused, and please have your son take
Thank
your
you.
seat. Mr. Gurner, any additional witnesses?
Not at this time, Judge.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lennerson, do you have any rebuttal witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Gurner, I think I'm in a position to make a decision today. I know you had indicated some preference to perhaps have an adjournment so you could ask additional questions of Mr. Harmon. Is it still your request to have an adjournment?
I think based on what the court is indicating that that will be fine. If you're
All right,
prepared
thank
for the evidence that's developed to make a review.
So, Mr. Lennerson, any closing argument you would like to make?
Well, my closing argument is more as a father than as an attorney. But obviously, there's two sides to this. There has been allegations that the child is uncomfortable with the father. I believe that she supported that in her testimony to the court, although I did not hear the testimony. There's been a continuing problem prevalent at least through the past year, 2 years, as it relates to an attitudinal problem between the daughter and the father. It's been brought to the attention of the court by the mother, yet denied by the father and denied by the supervisor grandfather. How can that be? I mean, of any of the testimony, the child's would be the most accurate because that's how the child views the contact. I know in her expression to me, she has difficulty, severe difficulty with contact with the father without it being supervised. The court should see this in the testimony that has been prevalent even today. There is a problem. It has not been addressed and it continues not to be addressed. The child is not comfortable with contact with the father without it being supervised. Why is that? Certainly, she needs continuing observation and counseling by counseling of some sort. Seems to be that there would be some sort of recommendation from friend of the court or DHS as to some type of supervisory contact between father and daughter so we can get to the bottom of the difficulty. But any other ruling other than that, then the court's not addressing the problem. The child's 11 years old. She's accused the father through other third parties of unwanted sexual connotation content. That should be addressed. She's addressed with third parties, the father, her contact with her father in regular and consistent parenting time. Is not comfortable unless parenting time is supervised. We have not got to the bottom of it. I don't care what the testimony is, and I don't care what the ruling of the court is. The court needs to take some consideration and look more closely at what the problem is between father and daughter. And until that's done, there's no chance of proper conduct or conduct that's rewarding to both father and daughter. It just doesn't exist at this time. We're asking the court to resolve it by having a joint counseling sessions with father and daughter, joint supervised parenting time with father and daughter, something to get to the bottom of improper conduct or contact between the two parties. I can't stress enough, as both an attorney and as a father, the importance that an 11-year-old is put on the contact with her father and that it needs to be corrected. We're asking the court to take more direct supervisory responsibility. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Gurumurthy?
Judge, I would just simply submit to the court that Ms. Morrison testified and raised some allegations. We subpoenaed some documentations so I could, again, call her and cross-examine, or at least call in my case in chief. Clearly, those were not provided. The name of the counsel was not provided. There was some discussion of Mr. Harmon. My notes indicate that she testified that Mr. Harmon worked at Auburn Hills telehealth facility. Today, Mr. Harmon says he works as therapy services of Clarkston, not Auburn Hills. And we tried looking up as to to try and make contact with this therapist. There's clearly some ulterior motive to hide and conceal who it is from Mr. Beauregard. Further, Mr. Leonardson had every opportunity to qualify him as an expert. He could have then brought in statements made by the child under a medical exception rule. Didn't do any of those things, and we were left with whatever this child says is consistent with whatever the mother says. And we don't know what the mother told the therapist other than what she told in her testimony. And again, I don't know what parts are consistent or inconsistent. I certainly was not going to open that door and ask those questions. But we're left with that. And again, we're left with a very undeveloped record. The record just simply wasn't developed. Further, we have my client and his father testifying that until the motion was filed, there were no issues. The week up until the motion was filed, the child was engaging in a normal stuff, and this arrangement, pursuant to the judgment of divorce, has just continued for a long time. But then the motion gets filed and the child's attitude changes, and there is no testimony as to the history leading up to that. It kept getting worse and then changed. All we have is the week prior to the motion being filed, no issues. And that's what Ms. Morrison testified to. And then boom, we get the motion and the child starts deteriorating. That clearly leads one to believe that there are some additional issues here. There are some additional factors to consider. There is some additional manipulation perhaps going on to minimize any contact with the father and so on. Again, the burden is on Mr. Leonardson. Mr. Leonardson, I don't believe, has presented and met that burden. And what we have is a he said, she said, without anything further to confirm or dispel what those allegations are. I know the court spoke with a minor child. And she has a preference, but this is not a custody motion. This is a parenting time motion. Parenting time factors are to be determined based on whether there is safety, whether there is concerning issues that linger, whether it's a safety issue for the child. And I will submit to the court that parenting time is occurring in the child's home where she lives with the mother. It's supervised there by the grandfather, Mr. Beauregard's father. There are no concerns, no issues. Nobody's ever called the police. Nobody's called Child Protective Services. All these witnesses testify, hey, we've got a problem. Choose not to address those concerns and problems. So there is nothing here. I just think the status quo continues at this point. And I would just leave it up to the court. I think there is no other third-party person to supervise. Ms. Morrison clearly didn't provide any other third party, and clearly DHH's third party is not going to work. There's no open case. So I think the status quo simply just continues at this point. That's all, Judge.
Thank you. All right, so the parties are before the front of the court following the ex parte motion filed by Ms. Morrison back in April. The court did have some testimony in August, as well as resumption of the testimony today. The ex parte motion stated that there were concerns that the supervisor falls asleep during the supervised parenting time. Also, that there was an incident with the report filed with Sault Ste. Marie City Police regarding a minor child reporting inappropriate behavior, including staring at her chest. The testimony indicates that there was no CPS action taken related to that incident. There was no restrictions imposed on Mr. Beauregard's parenting time based on that report of that incident. There were no criminal charges filed against Mr. Beauregard related to that incident. The supervisor did indicate that he sometimes rests his eyes, and there has been an occasion where he has fallen asleep. But it does appear that he is always in the same room or area as his son and his granddaughter, and is easily brought to attention with any noise or communication from either party. Additionally, it appears that a lot of these times Ms. Morrison is present herself nowadays for visitations, or somebody else is in the area. So when looking at what the allegations are that were brought, those two allegations as to a reason to change parenting time, there has to be proper cause or a change of circumstances that warrants a review of the parenting time or the custody. The standard to review parenting time is not as stringent as a custody change, and this is simply related to parenting time. But even given the lower standard, I don't believe these allegations, based on the evidence that was produced at hearing, rises to the level of proper cause or change of circumstances that warrants a review of the parenting time. Again, this allegation of staring at the chest that has not led to any sort of CPS involvement, safety plans, or criminal charges. And then the issue with the supervisor falling asleep, there's no proof of this happening over and over again, and that it happening to the point where it places the child in any danger or harm. So given the testimony and the allegations, it is the court's recommendation that the motion be dismissed due to lack of proper cause or change of circumstances. As counsel knows, the parties do have a right to object to the recommended order. Within 21 days, that information will be provided in the written recommendation that is sent to the parties and their counsel. Mr. Leonardson, do you have any additional questions?
No.
All right. Mr. Gurner, any questions?
No, sir. The prior order just continues, correct?
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully now that Mr. Beauregard knows who the counselor is, perhaps he can have some involvement, and maybe that will help the relationship he has with his daughter. So, now that he's involved, now that he can be involved, perhaps that will help some too. But given what was before the court, again, I don't believe there is proper cause or change of circumstances to make any changes at this time. All right, thank you everyone for appearing. That does conclude this matter.
Thank you, Judge.